Good evening to all. We'll be starting with hematology, and our speaker for the day is Dr. Abhash Jain, sir.
Hello everyone. So this is our third session for hematology and we have completed our theory part in last two sessions. So today we will be discussing about important MCQs or MRCP1 exam. So our first question is, which one of the following is a cause of extravascular hemolysis? Out of these: hereditary spherocytosis, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, disseminated intravascular coagulation, mismatched blood transfusion, hemolytic uremic syndrome. So you can try, doctor. It is better to be wrong here than in the exam. Suppose you make a mistake here, then you will remember it for the exams, right? Okay, so what is the cause of extravascular? So out of these, other are intravascular. Only one is that is extravascular. So that is hereditary spherocytosis. So hereditary spherocytosis causes extravascular hemolysis. Here RBCs are prematurely destroyed by the macrophages in the spleen due to their abnormal shape. Paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, disseminated intravascular coagulation, mismatched transfusion, and hemolytic uremic syndrome cause intravascular hemolysis. Right? So coming to next question. A 40 years old female has been diagnosed with hemolytic uremic syndrome after an episode of severe diarrhea. Her hemoglobin is 84. Which blood result is most likely to be found? Low haptoglobin, low bilirubin, elevated magnesium, low urea, and increased HbF. Okay, anyone want to make a guess? Okay, so the correct answer here is low haptoglobin because hemolytic uremic syndrome cause intravascular hemolysis. So free hemoglobin is reduced, which binds to haptoglobin. So the haptoglobin is consumed, and that's why the patient has got low haptoglobin. Bilirubin is elevated here, but not low. Urea is raised, and magnesium is not typically elevated. So that's why the most appropriate answer is low haptoglobin here. So next question, which one of the following is not a feature of paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria? Hemolytic anemia, positive heme test, hemoglobinuria, aplastic anemia, and hemarthrosis. Which is not?
Hemarthrosis.
Yes, doctor. Correct. You are right, doctor. So because paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria features are hemolytic anemia, hemoglobinuria, positive heme test, aplastic anemia, and thrombosis, especially venous. Hemarthrosis, bleeding into joint, is a feature of hemophilia and not paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. So hemarthrosis is the correct answer here. You are right, doctor. So which is the best diagnostic test for paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria out of the following five? Osmotic fragility test, FMC7 staining, PAS staining of erythrocytes, flow cytometry for CD59 and CD55, immunophenotyping for CD19 and CD20. You can try, doctor. Okay, so let's see.
CD59 and CD.
Yes, you are correct, doctor. Correct. Flow cytometry for CD59 and CD55. So PNH is caused by somatic mutation in PIK-A gene. So there is deficiency of G11 NCUT protein CD55 and CD59. So uncontrolled complement lysis is there, and flow cytometry detecting CD55, CD59 deficiencies on RBC is the gold standard diagnostic test. The HEM test is now obsolete. Was done previously. So our answer is correct, doctor. So next question is a 66 years old woman with anemia, hemoglobin is 8.7, MCV is 87, DAT positive, IgG only, and blood film shows spherocytes and reticulocytes. Most likely the underlying cause is non-Hodgkin's, mycoplasma, CML, AML, M3 type, cytomegalovirus infection.
Spherocytes, reticulocytes,
Mycoplasma.
Okay. So it is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because IgG only positive. So warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia, right? What is you gave answer mycoplasma, that is cold. So in cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia, IgM will be positive. Here IgG is positive, right? So secondary warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia in elderly patient is most commonly caused by lymphoproliferative.
Lymphoproliferative.
Here the non-Hodgkin's is the lymphoproliferative and CLL. And the mycoplasma causes cold. So CMV can cause autoimmune hemolytic anemia, but it is not common in this group, right? So here the warm IgG is present in warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia, and it is there in lymphoproliferative disorder. So that's why non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is the correct answer. A 60 years old woman with cold-induced Raynaud's purplish discoloration spherocytes on film. What is the next best investigation? Right? Complement level, osmotic fragility test, anti-nuclear antibody flow cytometry, direct antiglobulin.
This is cryoglobulinemia.
Yes, any guesses?
Osmotic fragility probe.
So direct antiglobulin test, because the cold symptoms are there, right? This patient is having Raynaud's phenomenon, purplish discoloration, spherocytes. Okay, she is having cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So what we suspect cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia because cold induced symptoms are there, spherocytes are there. So the direct antiglobulin test or Coombs is the essential next step to confirm immune hemolysis. So direct antiglobulin test in cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia is typically positive with complement only, C3d only. So ANA would come after confirming the hemolytic process, anti-nuclear antibody, right? So that's why the direct antiglobulin test is the correct, most appropriate. We have to choose the most appropriate answer. So a 26-year-old woman with sickle cell anemia presents with acute chest syndrome. What is the first-line long-term therapy to reduce the future episodes? Hydroxycarbamide.
Hydroxyurea.
Okay, prophylactic antibiotics, warfarin, long-term opioid analgesia, and regular blood transfusion. Okay,
Hydroxyurea.
right, it seems to be easy. So acute chest syndrome, your answer is correct, doctor. Acute chest syndrome is a life-threatening complication of sickle cell disease. Hydroxycarbamide or hydroxyurea is a first-line long-term prophylaxis. It increases the HbF level, which reduces the sickling. It reduces the frequency of acute coronary syndrome, painful crisis, and transfusion requirements. So regular transfusion are used in severe and refractory cases, not on regular basis. A 15-year-old girl, mother has hereditary spherocytosis on
sepals.
Presents with severe upper abdomen pain. Most likely diagnosis IVC thrombosis, acute pancreatitis, renal vein thrombosis, gastritis, and biliary colic.
IVC thrombosis.
Colic. Because hereditary spherocytis presents as gallstones.
Yes, you are correct, doctor. So let's see which is the most appropriate answer here out of IVC thrombosis and biliary colic. It's biliary colic, right?
Okay.
Hereditary spherocytosis causes chronic hemolysis. So there is elevated bilirubin, pigment, gallstone, biliary colic, right? So the girl likely has hereditary spherocytosis. Why? Because autosomal dominant. Mother is having so 50% chances of inheritance.
Inheritance, yes.
Yeah. OCP is a red herring here. Key technical point is all hemolytic condition risk of pigment gallstones is there. So the most appropriate and the most correct answer you have to choose. So the most appropriate and most correct is biliary colic here, right? And the site of pain also, upper abdominal pain, right? A 32-year-old male post-splenectomy for hereditary spherocytosis. What new finding in blood film post-op? Schistocyte, bite cells, Heinz bodies, spherocyte, all jolly.
Howell jolly bodies.
Easy one, I think. Right? It is easy answer.
Yes.
You are correct. All jolly bodies are nuclear remnants normally removed by the spleen.
Yes.
What happens that post-splenectomy spleen no longer filters all jolly bodies, and that's why they appear on the blood film. So spheroids were already present pre-op. Bite cells and Heinz bodies are seen in G6PD deficiency, and schistocytes indicate microangiopathic hemolytic.
Microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, yes.
That's why the most appropriate answer is all jolly bodies.